Today, we're just going to talk through all of the different drone equipment and what you might want to consider when you go out into the overworld. There's a lot of different things to consider. There's some drone equipments that aren't very good and I wouldn't ever use. And there are some that are really, really good and I like to use quite often. And I even like to double up with some of them. It might be a surprise to some of you that you can actually do that, but I believe it does stack. And until I'm proven wrong, I'm going to keep doing that. But there is a lot of things to consider when you're going to and dealing with all the drone equipment upgrades. So we're going to go through them all. We're not going to take too long. Stay through to the end. And I'm going to tell you exactly what kits I like to use personally. And you can see if you want to mimic that. So let's jump into it. So if you're just here in Sanctum Mesa, you can see. You can jump out to your map, click the M button. Then you can go to this waypoint over here. Teleport on the left, all right? So that is the fastest way to get to everything you need to do when you're upgrading drone equipment. Now, to get some of the materials for all of this drone equipment, there are a lot of things to consider. But I like to do one stage 3 run a day, but that's because I don't have heaps of time. But if you're trying to get up all the materials for this drone equipment, you should start off with the mining ones and then do a lot of stage 2 runs. That is going to be the fastest way to get them because you don't really need much of the T5 stuff. And you can get all that stuff from stage 2 from what I've seen. You don't need a whole lot of it, but you need a lot of the lower stuff, especially one particular ore that's called Illuvium, which is the blue one, and you can get that from stage 2. So that's what I would spam. So if we go into the area, let's quickly jump over to drone and we'll start to have a look. So you've got all of your tier 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 equipment, and I'm going to go through kind of what the main ones sort of do. So you've got multiple tiers of several of these. A good example is capture power 15%. That is a stage 0, I believe. No, that is a stage 1. You have a capture power 15%, and then at the bottom of stage 1, you also have capture power 35%. And now, from memory, you won't actually see different capture powers in the different tiers. They're both in tier 1, but you need to essentially dismantle lots of that initial capture power one to get the later one. So anything in tier 1 here that you craft, for example, if you were to craft this vegetation sequencer, if you dismantle that by using the deconstruct option at the top here, if you dismantle it, you will get one uncommon drone component. Now, here's the most interesting part, and something even I didn't know until recently, is if you were to get this capture power by 35%, which takes 8 uncommon drone components, so let's move around my camera for a second. It takes 8 uncommon drone components. If you were to create this and then dismantle this, what would happen is you would get those 8 drone components back. But since you're dismantling it, you get another one. So you get 9 back. And what this means is as long as you have these other 2 resources, you can continually re-roll essentially for that secondary effect. Now, I'm just for context, because I feel it's really important, I'm going to show you a really quick example of the secondary effect. So if we go to my inventory and we look at this one here, which is mining power 30%, it has a secondary effect of mining extra cost minus 10%. This pretty much ranges from everything. I've seen every combination under the sun. So common ones are things like reducing costs, extra mining power, extra capture power, things like that. And I'm not going to talk at length on the secondary effects, but if you have the spare resources, I would keep re-rolling until you get something good, because it can make a big difference, especially when we talk about this middle component, which we'll talk about in just a second. So if we go back into the forge, we've got capture power boost, augment boost, so you can have more augments, heat map, harvesting energy costs, mining energy costs in general, there's different ones. If we go to tier 2, you've got mining power, you've got mining energy costs, available suit slots, you don't really need that one. Detection range is not terrible, but when you upgrade your basic visor into the Supreme visor, you definitely need it a lot less. Heat map is actually pretty great if you're really new to the game, but you don't really need the heat map accuracy, not at this stage. You might need it down the road when Illuvium starts to grow. It might become a lot more relevant. Duplicate essence and duplicate ore, they're very case by case. If you find it's useful, then go for it, but I wouldn't get it if you've only got one. I would stack as many effects as you can together to get your duplication chance to like 20 or 30%, then it can be pretty cool, but mining power is probably better. Duplicate essence chance. If we go to tier 3, you've got heat map accuracy again, things like that. Capture power, that's a really cool one. We'll talk about that one at length. Available alluvial slots, encounter energy, all that, capture power. Mining energy cost, encounter energy cost. I haven't used that one personally, but I feel like that would be quite good if you're really just going for alluvials. Mining power, 30% and all that. Energy cost and capture power. And tier 5, some key ones is you've got a lot of scan power ones. So these ones are really, really interesting, but I don't know if I would recommend it. So let's talk through what I think is best and what I think is worst. So for tier 1, capture power, you can get up to a capture power 35%. Not only that, but it's really easy to get. These chromiums are not that hard to come by. Palladium is everywhere, and you only need those two essentially to get a bunch of the earlier tier 1 ones, dismantle them, and then get the capture power 35%. And I've caught a lot of tier 5 alluvials by stacking 2 of them together and getting 70% capture power. You can use rare shards, tier 4 shards, and you can capture those tier 5. So if you're having trouble finding resplendent shards, this can be a really good way to just give you that edge, especially as you try to finish up your collection and get those high tier alluvials. You're going to want to have capture power 35%. So before we move on to some of the other good ones, let's talk about some of the really bad ones. I talked about it briefly, but heat map accuracy, don't bother with it. Detection ranges, only if you really, really want to, but don't bother with it. You've got energy cost reduction, which can be okay. I wouldn't bother with anything to do with harvesting. Harvesting seems a lot less popular. If you're trying to get all the augments, that's when you would start implementing some of those equipments, but I wouldn't bother with them otherwise. If we're moving on to some of the other areas, anything that increases your suit slots, anything that increases your weapon slots, augment slots, you just don't need them. You don't need more than 4 augments or 3 augments or whatever to carry into a battle. You don't even need more than 5 alluvials to beat most of the higher end stuff. Your team needs to be pretty good. You need like a good fire composition or a nature composition or something, but you don't need those extra slots really. Although one of your drone equipment slots will need the alluvial slots. You'll need that equipment to go in there. So you'll probably have to get one that boosts the alluvial slots, but then that's the one where you're going to be really focusing on that secondary effect. That's what I highly, highly recommend. And as I talked before, chance to duplicate things, very case by case. I'd only get them if you're stacking them together. Now, some of the really, really good ones, mining energy cost is pretty good, but mining power is what I would be focusing on. If you can get 50, 60% mining power, if you combine 2 things together and stuff like that, then you're starting to do really well. And mining power with a secondary effect of more mining power is a really, really good one to have. Now, I would preface this by saying that mining power and scanning power are both almost equally as good. Mining power will let you get more of the resources at any given mine. So if you mine, you get 2 or 3. With higher mining power, you might get 5 or 6, right? But on the really tough ores, the ones that you get in the really late stages of the game, this mining power can do pretty much nothing. It doesn't help that much on your anomalous ores, right? That's where scanning power comes in. If you focus on scanning power, I would focus on one or the other. If you focus on scanning power, you'll have a much higher chance of being able to see what is inside that ore. Okay, and I think it goes for alluvial wakes as well, so it can be pretty nifty. You'll be able to see what is inside the ore better. And that means maybe you can see 80% of what's inside it. You can be like, okay, do I want to mine this ore? So now you can really focus on getting that hyper rare stuff. But if you're trying to gather lots of different materials just so you can upgrade all these things, then I would go for mining power. So I would start off getting like your capture powers and stuff and a little bit of mining power and duplicate essence. Then eventually you get crazy amounts of mining power and just go through stage 2 and stage 3 areas and just collect everything. And then what I would personally do is I would start to transition to scanning power. Get scanning power, try and go for a scanning secondary effect, but a mining secondary effect would probably also be really, really good. So that is kind of the pathway I would go when transitioning there. On the other side of that, I wouldn't be mining and scanning in the same instance. This is really important. Your mining power and your scanning power equipments are very, very different. No, sorry, mining and capturing. Some runs you will want to go in and you want to hit all the wakes, scan them all, and see which alluvials you want to capture. Then you might get a counter reduction cost, capture power 35%, 2 of them maybe with secondaries where you reduce the encounter enter cost. And now you can capture as many alluvials as you can and have a really high chance of capturing them. You're not wasting time, you're not wasting energy or your daily energy failing all these captures on your Vermilias, your Alphies, whatever, then you're doing that. But if you want to go mining, you get rid of all that equipment and instead you'll put in mining equipment and you'll go in and just hit all the harvestables, all the ores, to make sure that you mine as much as you possibly can. Bring all those materials back, upgrade things, and then if you want to go and capture tomorrow, go and capture tomorrow. I would keep them as separate as you can. So the other thing we need to quickly discuss is in your inventory. So pretty much anything can go in this first or this last slot. In the middle slot, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I know that the alluvial slots increase can go here, and I have had a lot of trouble finding out what else goes there. I think heat map accuracy might also be able to go there, but as I said, probably don't worry too much about that. So you put that in there. So what's really important here is making sure the secondary effect of your mining, of your alluvial slots is really good. In this case, it's mining power, which I love because I'm heavily into mining. I get all the mining power. So as promised, I will show you exactly what I use. When I'm mining, I use this extra alluvial slots with mining power 7.5%. You can get 6 alluvial slots or 4 alluvial slots. It doesn't really matter. Your team's going to win anyways. On the first one, I've got mining power 30%, and I drop the mining cost by 10%, which isn't perfect, but it can make a pretty good difference. My goal is to get mining power 30% and then as much mining power as I can as my secondary effect. And my third slot here is capture power and mining power. I haven't been able to afford a second mining power, otherwise I would do that. But having the 35% capture power is a really good balance. I like to separate these two things as much as possible, but I was focusing on kind of both at once as I was learning and enjoying the game. So capture power just in your slots anywhere is really, really good. It makes a big difference. Trust me, I've failed enough captures to know. It makes a big difference. But it also has mining power 15% as the secondary effect. So it's got some great mining power. So secondary to that, I have this one, which has capture power 35% and encounter enter cost minus 10%. And I put that on the first slot if I'm going again. And this one is the same thing. So I need a second mining power thing, but you get the idea. Two mining power 30% or 2 capture power 35%. That's pretty much the equipment I like to use. So you guys get the idea. Try and focus and specialize on what you're trying to do. If you want to go harvestables too, get all your harvesting costs, all your duplicate essences, because essences are awful to come by. So if you're going for your essences eventually, then definitely get all your duplicate essences. So I hope you guys learned something. I said essences way too many times. Have a good day, everyone. I hope you learned something, and Merry Christmas, of course.